Hello, welcome to TechPoint Fundamentals YouTube channel. Today we will learn what is partial types, what is partial classes, and what is the use of partial classes, right? And this is the most interview questions that have you ever used partial classes knowingly or unknowingly, and also why someone used partial classes. What is the real use of a partial class? We will see the real example for partial classes, why Microsoft has introduced the concept of partial classes. So here I have written a simple nice article on partial classes. You can find the article link in the description box. So let's see the origin, on in which version Microsoft has introduced the concept of partial types. So in the traditional main version of C Sharp, a .NET Framework version, that is .NET Framework 1 and 1.1, so there is no concept of partial types, and classes structure and interface must be created within a single source file. If you want to split the definition of a class or a structure or interface in multiple source file, then it was not possible, because whenever you creating a class, it should be unique within that namespace or assembly. We will see example what does it mean, but let's focus on the theoretical part for this. So partial class, partial interface and partial structure was introduced in C Sharp 2.0 in .NET Framework 2.0, because C Sharp language version is tightly coupled with the .NET Framework version in almost cases. So now it is possible to separate the definition of a class, interface or structure in multiple source files. So what is the partial types? Actually, a partial type is can be defined with the keyword partial, and whenever you defining a class, interface or structure with partial keyword, then you or someone else can extend the functionality of that class, interface or structure. So whenever you create a partial types, then all the parts must be in the same namespace, otherwise it will provide a error. So this is the basic about partial types, right? And so let's see quickly what does it mean namespace, and what is the mean of splitting a particular class or interface or structure in different source file. So till now what I have done, I have created the simple program console applications here. If you see here, I have in this program there is two class, right? If you see here, I have defined a class user with partial keyword, means this is a partial class, and there could be a one more class with the name iUser, and the whatever I have defined here, it will be available to the next partial class here. Here if you see, I have created one more partial class with the same name iUser here, and if you see here, here is also the name of the class should same, and if you see here, I have declared two properties, first name and last name, in one partial class, and in the second partial class I have created a property, read only property called a full name, where I have uh, combined the first name and last name. If you see here, I can access these two properties, first name and last name, here in the second partial class. But where it is defined, first name and last name, it is defined in the first partial class, right? So whenever you create a partial type, a partial class, then you can access the member which is declared in the earlier version of earlier uh, partial types. So if you see here, I have split the definition of class user in two different source file, uh, partial user 1 and partial user 2. So in this way you can split any uh, class or interface in multiple files like this. I have created the same class with two different uh, partial classes, and with the said that in different uh, source file you can change the name of the CS file, but the name of the class should be same again. So this is how you can create a partial class in C sharp. And again, if you see here, a class declared with partial keyword is called partial class. A partial class is special feature of C sharp which provide the ability to implement the functionality of a single class into multiple code files. So when you are creating a partial class, a partial structure or partial interface, then there are some rules which you have to follow whenever you creating a partial type or partial class. So let me clear you when the terminology which I have used. I am using partial types and partial class. Whenever I am when we are I am saying partial types, it means partial type includes all the three things: partial class, partial interface, and partial structure. Whenever I say partial class, means this is only partial class. But in case of partial types, there could be two other things: partial interface and partial structure as well, and partial class as well. So let's see the rule. What is the rule you have to follow when you are creating a partial class or partial any partial types? So there may be some different some points may be differ from structure to interface as well from this partial class, but I will create a separate video on partial structure and partial interface in future, right? So partial modifier must be used just before class keyword name. If you see here in the example here, this class keyword and partial keyword, so what will be the position of this partial keyword? You must have to put it just before the class keyword. If you put it like this, then it will give a compile time error, right? So it should be just before the class keyword. And all the parts must be declared with partial keyword, otherwise it will cause a compile time error, right? If you see here, the name of the class is same, right? Class user, and here is also the class user. If you see here, if you remove this keyword class here, then see what is missing: partial modifier or declaration of type user. Another partial declaration of this type, it is saying a class with the same name already exists with partial modifier, right? So you must have to provide the partial keyword in all the parts, subparts. each part must be available at compile time to form the final type. Here if you see, both the partial classes are in the same namespace in partial types. If you see the namespace partial types here, and also here the partial types is here. So in both the these both partial classes will be available at compile time. When you build your project, your application, it will create a final type. So if it will not be possible that you can create one partial class here and one in another namespace or library. Here you cannot create a second partial type in this project altogether. So all the parts must be in the same namespace, and they must be available at uh, compile time to create the final type. Each part must be available at compile time, and you can also have constructor or destructor in a partial class like this. This is as usual behavior of a class. A class can contains constructor and destructor. So yes, you can also have a constructor and destructor in the class as well. All partial class can have partial method. Yes, a partial method can only be uh, put in a partial types site, right? So I will create a separate video on this partial method, because they have their own rules and regulation. So I will create a different video, separate video on this topic. So uh, just note down it at this moment, that a partial class can contains partial method. A partial method is nothing but a method declared with the partial keyword, but the return type of a partial method must be void. And you can also split the definition of a method into multiple code base files. Like you can declare uh, method signature in one partial class, and the body of that partial method into another partial class. So just remember what is partial method, and I will create a separate video on that topic. All the parts must have same accessibility like public, private, protected, etc. So if you see here, uh, these both partial classes, they must have the same accessibility. If you think that if you create this private, then see, element defined in a namespace cannot be explicitly declared as private, protected, protected internal, or private protected. So you must have to provide same accessibility, right? Both are public here, and also if you say put it like this, then whenever you build this program, it will work fine, right? All the parts must have same accessibility, either public, private, protected, whatever. If any part is declared as abstract, then all the parts is considered as abstract. So again, if you are creating any part as abstract class, then other parts all also will be treated as abstract. So this is when a class type is abstract, then whenever you create other parts, then that will also be considered as abstract. If any part is declared as sealed, then all the parts is considered as sealed. If any class is sealed, then other subparts are also be treated as a sealed class. Inheritance between the partial types parts is not allowed. So if you see, you cannot inherit this partial class with this partial class, because they both belongs to the same. If you try to do, then let's see what happened. It will provide you the compile time error. Circular base class dependency involve user and user. So these are not two different entities, they are the same entity, which will combine or merge together when project is compiled. The class member declared in a partial definition will be available to all other parts, right? Which if you have already seen here, I have declared two properties, first name and last name, in one partial type, and it is available in another partial type here, first name and last name. So yes, we can access all the members which is declared in one partial class to another partial class. All the parts can specify different base interface, but the final type implementation all the interface listed by all the partial declarations, right? If in this example, you can inherit some base class into base interface into these, and some another interface into these partial types. When the program compiles, these both interface will be inherited to the class user. Nested partial types are allowed. You can contain a partial type within a partial type, right? So all the parts can specify different class attribute like serializable attribute and absolute attribute. You can specify the attribute to any member of this class, right? Any class, any partial class can have attributes, and suppose the different parts have different attributes, then when program will compile, all these attributes will be merged together. If you put comment to this class, when program compiles, it will generate the combined comments from both these partial types. So the same program can, if you run this program, you can see I have created the object of this user class, a first name and last name. I have just created first name and last name, initialize these two properties and run this, get this property full name. So if you run the program, let's see, user dot full name point fundamentals. So points in the first name and last name in the fundamentals, so it merge the both first name and last name here. And also if you see here, the partial modifier is not available on delegate or enum declaration. In partial types, you can only create partial class, partial interface and partial structure, but not enum and delegate. So if you see here in the program, you cannot declare this enum as partial, right? So if you try to do so, partial modifier can only appears immediately before class struct interface or void. Void is for partial method, so you cannot create an enum with partial. Similarly, if you create a delegate, right, here I have created a delegate of user type here, this method basically. So if you try to put a delegate, partial delegate, you will get a compile time error. Partial modifier can only appear before class struct interface or void. So you cannot create partial delegate at all in C sharp. So again, these is partial types, and when you can create a partial types, and for enum and delegate you cannot specify partial keywords at all. So these are the basic rules of partial class, right? Now we will see the advantage of partial classes. So with the help of partial classes, multiple developers can work simultaneously on the same classes on different files. Yes, multiple people can work on same class basically, but in different code based files, right? If you see here, one person can work on this one CS file, and some people can work on this CS file on same time without any conflict. But yes, this region is not so much strong, that because we are using some a lot of code repository like GitHub and TFS. So but yes, we can use this feature like this as well, but not recommended, like using this for multiple users, for this reusability, right, of same class. With the help of partial classes, you can split the UI design code and the business logic code to read and understand the code. Yes, so Visual Studio has started work using this partial classes. A lot of you can say a lot of uh, types, uh, whether when Visual Studio creates the auto generated codes. You can also maintain and manage your application on efficient manner by compressing large classes into small ones. Yes, you can split the uh, a large class into small code base into different chunk of classes, partial class files. When you were working with automatically generated code, the code can be added into class without having to recreate the source file like in Visual Studio. When you are working on a automatically generated source code, in that case you can create a partial class, so that whenever you recreate that source file, then it will not override uh, your code base, because you have created separate partial class. And whenever you Visual Studio create automatic generated code, then it will replace only your own, not your. So your code will be separate, and it will be available whenever you create or drop your auto generated code files. So now coming to the point, what is the real use of this partial class? So we will see some example where uh, Visual Studio use this partial class internally, but we have never noticed that what is the type of that class, and why Microsoft has used this partial class. So the first example is web form application. Whenever you create a web form application, it creates AXPX file, and with ASPX file it creates aspx.cs file and aspx.designer.cs file. So let's quickly see this structure in example. So web app, I have added just a simple web application where I have added axpx projects here. If you see, this is the about.axpx file. So if you click on this, if you see here, there is two file about.axpx.ts file. If you see here, it creates partial class about which inherits from page, right? So yes, aspx file create a partial class, and if you see here about.axpx.designer.cs file, it is also create partial class. If you see the name of the class about, and also here the name of the class is about. So these both files, when program compiles, will merge together, and it will, this designer file contains the web form UI elements. If you see here, like label 1, text box, so all this, the design parts of the page, it contains all the design components, and also here it will create the backend logic where, so this way Microsoft Visual Studio separate the logic of design from the actual user interaction logic. So this is the first example where Microsoft has used this partial class on very large scale. The second one, if you see Windows form application, in Windows form, same, it used the designer.cs file and also the main win form. In this example, if you see, I have added just one Windows form application project. So if you see here, I have added a login.cs. This is the login form, normal login form. I have added just label and text box, and if you see, it has created login.designer.cs file with partial class login, right, which contains the design components. If you see here, text box 1, label, and all these things, and this is a regex form where you can validate your form elements, text box, right? So yes, in Windows form also it creates a partial class. Similarly, if you have ever used ADO.NET entity data model, that that is also known as EDMX file. uh, Whenever you create a ADO.NET entity data model, it creates a lot of partial classes and partial methods. So let's see the structure of this ADO.NET entity model, what files it's generate when you add any data model. So I have also added a simple ADO.NET entity data model. So here, for adding ADO.NET entity data model, you can add it. You can go and I you have to go to data, and also you can find this AD.NET entity data model, right? So you can add this from these options here, but I am not going to add this because I have already added this AD.NET entity data model into our project, right? So here, if you expand this, so here you will see adu.net entity data model dot context dot tt file, and also under this it creates context dot cs file. Here if you see, it creates a partial class which inherits from db context file, right? And also this is the designer.cs file. You can have your own custom code if you required, but under this adu.net entity data model, if you see, these are the components which I have, components of the database which I have added into the designer file. If you see here, this look into this, yes, user login and user details. I have added two tables here, user login and user details. For these two objects, Visual Studio creates partial class for these two, right? This is added a partial class in the cs file, and also if you see here, the entry for these two partial classes is there in context file, right? db set, it created a db set user login and user details. But if you see, Visual Studio is using this partial class concept at very large scale in this adu.net entity data model. So you can extend, right, this partial class, and you can add some more properties into this class. If you create a partial class with this user details name in somewhere else in the same namespace, then you can create some additional properties. Suppose there is a table which contains user information, but there is something you have to calculate based on this field. So you can add additional properties with this user details class, and you can calculate, yeah, you can have the logic to calculate something within that class. And whenever you access this class in the web form, so you can get these additional properties as well to show, for example, the age of a user. If user has provided the date of birth field, and you can subtract that date of birth with the current date, and you can calculate the age of the user. So there is no need to store this age of the user into the database. You can calculate it dynamically in the same class by extending this class. So this is the use of partial class. And also if you see other examples like link to SQL classes, also this is the great tool whenever you are working on any ORM pattern. So link to SQL class ORD, object relational designer. When you create an ORD, then it creates also partial classes. So let's quickly see the structure of this link to SQL class. In this project I have also added no, I have not added this link to SQL into my project. So you can also add this link to SQL class, but in this Visual Studio 17 you have to add the extension. It is not enabled by default. You have to add whenever you require. So I have not added this. So let's quickly see the diagram which I have added. If you see here, if you create a link you to SQL code file, then it creates same like we have seen in this ADMX file. It will create a context file with partial class db context, that is it inherits from data context file. And here you can see also there is a lot of partial methods on created, insert user, update user. These all are partial classes, if you partial methods where the return type is void, and also within the partial class. So the same like this AD.NET integrated data model for link to SQL, it creates the partial classes. Dataset designer file, this is also XML schema definition language. When you add any XSD file in your project, it creates designer.cs file which contains a partial class. So let's quickly see the structure of this XSD file. I have added a dataset designer file. If you want to add this in any project, so you have to just go here and add new item and go to data, and this dataset, you can add this dataset. It will create the .xsd file from here, right? So you can add, but I am not going to add this into this project because I have already added a xsd file to demo the things. Here if you see, it creates a designer.cs file which contains, if you see here, partial class, also here is partial class, and is this partial class there is a lot of auto generated code, right? So yes, it contains a lot of partial classes. And also if you see here in this file, it have added all the database objects like a partial class. So yes, if you add any XSD file into any application or project, it creates uh, partial classes. So the last one which I have mentioned, WPF user control. Whenever you are creating any WPF user control, then it creates uh, partial classes along with the designer files. Here I have added a WPF user control. If so, this is a designer files, right? And if you look into the xml.cs file, it creates partial class which inherits from user control. So you can add here your user interaction logics, and this designer part contains the designer of this application, right? User control, you can add uh, create a form, any form here with the UI design. Also you can add the code behind file into this partial class file. So this is how you can add a lot of controls which creates a partial classes and partial methods internally. So this is how Microsoft Visual Studio is using partial class on a very large scale in lot of project. I know you can you have never seen that why it is using the partial class internally, but I am pretty sure you have used this partial class knowingly or unknowingly in any project. If you have worked on this uh, types, if you are from Windows application, you have always used Windows forms, and if you are from web background, you have added a simple ASP.NET web application. Or if you are using any ORM pattern entity framework, then it is also there in those types as well. So yes, in Visual Studio, whatever technology you are using, whatever uh, project, whatever, but you must have used this partial class knowingly or unknowingly. So that is for today. You can find this article links in the description box, and here I have also added the program here which I have shown in the demo, right? So you can go and play around with this program here, and also please do comment in the discussion box if you want uh, any more clarification on this topic. And also please don't forget to like, subscribe, share and comment. Thank you.